Kanye West, producer, rapper, designer, and global celebrity.
21 Grammys, a superstar family. No other person in the public eye better embodies or represents the highs and lows of fame.
At different points in his career, he has declared himself as the next Walt Disney, this generation's closest thing to Einstein, a god, and now, a devoted follower of Christ.
Whatever your thoughts on Kanye West, both he and his life's works have left an unquestionable mark on music, design, and society as a whole.
Indeed they have, Alicia.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey everyone, welcome back to the Environmental Podcast. As you all expected, our second biographical episode is, of course, on Kanye West.
Yes, a worthy successor to Rachel Carson.
Yeah, the famous 20th century ecologist.
Yes.
So it's a logical follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that Kanye is kind of a perfect case study for the modern world. We wanted to do an artist because we both kind of enjoy the idea of tracking an artist's, what would you say, psychology through their work.
Yeah.
And Kanye being so famous is kind of almost a barometer for the whole society at large.
Yeah, as a whole.
So that's what's interesting about it. I'm a big Kanye fan.
You are?
What about you?
I didn't know any Kanye songs until I started dating you.
What about now?
Now I know some, and I like a lot of them.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because I think the reason he's so popular is because his music
is something for everybody.
It's so varied. There's something for everybody, as we'll be getting into.
Yeah.
And it kind of transcends any kind of cultural genres.
Yeah, I think so.
Definitely transcends hip hop.
Yeah, my expectations when you said you were a Kanye fan, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. He's hip hop. He's that means drugs and.
I'm just kind of the typical white teen kid who's a fan of Kanye and Drake.
But I just didn't know. I thought in my eyes hip hop was a genre which was just very hardcore. But then you introduced me to Kanye, and I was like, wow, his music.
Well, there was a Christian theme running through it from the start, right? And it was it's always very self-aware. That's something which I think people often ignore. Yeah,
we'll get into it later, but I just was saying, I was shocked by the musicality even just in his works.
Yeah, so we're just going to do a quick detour before we get into Kanye, we'll just talk about the stuff that we've watched and been reading for the last week.
Yeah.
So together we watched Dr. Strangelove.
Yes, by Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, 1965, Cold War comedy.
Yes.
It's called Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Yeah, it was
and I'd seen it before, because I love all of Kubrick's movies. And what do you think about it?
I thought it was really funny. I rarely watch comedies, modern comedies, and find them funny. But this one, just kind of dumb comedy,
Yeah,
it was
I suppose. Good. Well, every character was kind of so caricatured.
Yeah.
It's kind of about masculinity and, let's say, American warmongering and Cold War paranoia.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable, and it looks really good as well. We also watched Jason and the Argonauts, which was another 60s, this time an adventure movie.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was a good kind of popcorny, old classical Greek tale.
Yeah, there were some things about it we were kind of calling into question. We were like, this is a bit
problematic,
a little bit racist at times.
Special effects were really good, though.
Yeah.
It's cool to learn about that.
You downloaded a video game this week.
Yeah, we've been playing some Mario Kart. That's been fun.
That.
And you've been playing some...
Yes, because Mario Kart, we used to evoke a kind of rage in me that nothing besides bowling can evoke.
You mean Wii Sports bowling or real life
bowling? No, real
bowling. Yeah.
Makes me... I've cried. I've been known to cry at bowling alleys. So Mario Kart Wii used to evoke that in me.
My favorite thing about Alicia is when she loses at a game, she doesn't get angry. I suppose she gets angry, but it manifests as just extreme hysterical sadness. It's like angry tears are just flowing down with rage.
Yeah, it's because for some reason, if I lose at ping pong or something, I'm like, no, this doesn't mean I'm just bad at ping pong. It means I'm bad at perseverance or something. Anyway.
But you've been liking Mario Kart?
Yeah, I like it a lot better on the Switch. And another thing I mentioned, which I've been consuming this week, is Pocket Camp.
Animal Crossing.
Which is Animal Crossing for the phone. I probably won't be continuing with it because it's not the greatest game. It's just a waste of time. But yeah, anyway, I've been playing a little bit of Animal Crossing just because I wanted to get it on the Switch, but then I was like, no, it's a waste of money and time.
It's those Corona times.
Yeah.
It gets people doing weird things.
Have you watched or read anything else, Aaron?
I've been reading a French book called Gaspard de la Nuit. That's about it. It's kind of episodic, so there's just multiple chapters, each one of them about a page, and each one is just kind of a little vignette describing a nice, say, impressionistic picture of France in the 1800s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of references to moonlight and like raindrops and things like that. Little
Nice.
demons, little dwarf. Yeah, it's very good. Shall we get into Kanye?
Can I mention one more thing I was reading this week?
Okay.
I'm reading a book called Women Healing Earth, and it's a collection of essays written by people living in the women living in the developing world and expressing their experience with environmental protection and sustainability. It's really interesting. I would definitely recommend it to anyone interested in ecofeminism.
Very cool.
Yeah. Listen to some Kanye this week. Aaron sent me a great playlist.
Yeah, well, we've been listening to kind of prepare for it. I made the mistake of trying to like look back at his music just to get myself back into that mode, but I kind of fell down the rabbit hole and got a little bit obsessed again because he just has so much great stuff.
He does, yeah. So Kanye West, where did it all start?
Kanye West was born June 8th, 1977 in Atlanta, Georgia. His mum, Donda West, was a professor and chair of the English department at Chicago State University, and his father, Ray West, was a former Black Panther. Some fun facts about Kanye were that he stayed in China for a little while, a couple semesters at the age of 10.
Yeah, his mum was teaching English at a university there on an exchange.
True. So I think that's a cool and very random kind of tidbit. He says that he's forgotten most of it.
Was he learning Mandarin?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I saw that online. It said that his mum said that he was picking up the language really well.
Oh, that's really random.
I know,
like, kind of cool.
It would be really funny if in one album he just started rapping in Mandarin. I think that would pretty much break culture, but
yeah.
Maybe we'll get that at some point. Maybe he'll reconnect with his childhood in China.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know. His parents divorced when he was 3, so he was kind of raised by his mum, and he had a very special relationship with her.
Okay.
He was really close to her. He's always talking about how she instilled in him a kind of self-belief and a willingness to try things and be creative, and especially to be himself from a very young age. And he's very, very, very vocal about that. And that his kind of self-confidence, which is almost a meme, I guess, in society, is...
I was going to say, you have to wonder where that kind of confidence comes from in the modern world, but I guess
that was from his mum, and he obviously thinks that's a key part of parenting, because I see him instilling the same things in his family, which is kind of interesting, especially as we look later in his career. He had always been into poetry and art and making music, and when he was in his teens, he met the producer No ID, who kind of mentored him into sampling, and he got his first sampling machine, and that's when he started making beats and almost obsessively producing like that.
So when he was a teenager?
Yeah.
That's neat.
He studied painting at Chicago's American Academy of Art. He got in on a scholarship.
Wow.
And then he kind of dropped that.
Fair.
Went into English in the Chicago State University, and then dropped out of that at age 20 to focus on music.
And what was his first album
So his
called?
first record was called The College Dropout, so that was obviously self-referential.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just a really cool example of self-confidence.
Yeah, I
like
think
we're
so.
20 right now.
Yeah.
And we've talked about dropping out of school. But to be honest, I don't have the self-belief to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he had so much trust in himself. And especially think about it because he was learning English at Chicago State University, the school of which his mother was a chair of the English department.
Yeah.
And she was always very much, he's talked about it, was always very much, you got to go to school, you've got to go to college, you've got to get your education.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a usual kind of dropout. It was like, that's extra pressure.
Yeah, because then you have to like prove to
you
your
have
mom
to
that it's
then you
worth
have to
it.
succeed, otherwise you're kind of just screwed up.
Yeah, that's interesting because like most artists I find their first album is like self-titled. So like he could have easily just said Kanye West, cool enough name.
Yeah, well in a way it's kind of self-titled.
Exactly, it's cool. It's like your identity. I see a lot of people who drop out from university or college, that's their identity for the first bit, saying I've done this, that this means I'm gonna be the next Kanye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's like that's a we can talk about that. Like in culture, that's kind of a trope we see. It's like the genius who's too cool or too talented or too smart for university or college, so they drop out and become successful. We hear that about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. I think they both either skipped or didn't go to university. So Kanye is another example of that. And I think it's also kind of, the name being The College Dropout is maybe indicative of him being different from the rest of hip hop at the time, which was all about kind of bragging about yourself. College Dropout is a kind of typical slacker
True.
name. So
Yeah.
that was kind of a little joke as well.
I never
Because
thought
obviously
about that.
the album went, spoiler, the album went triple platinum. There were a ton of songs on it which were really, really big hits.
Yeah.
Some of them slow jams with Jamie Foxx. Jesus Walks obviously was huge.
Yeah.
One song we should mention, well, Kanye got into a car crash in 2002.
Okay.
He fell asleep at the wheel and was very lucky, I think. What happened was his jaw kind of was all mangled, so he had to go into surgery and have that all wired up.
Mm-hmm.
And a famous story is him recording the song Through the Wire, which was just a rap song with some kind of like a soul sample on making the beat. And he was rapping on that with his mouth wired shut, so his verses are all kind of muffled.
Mumbly. Yeah.
So yeah, that was on the College Dropout, so that was kind of a big deal as well.
Yeah, that's really it's crazy that you can just make your first album, have so much confidence in your music making abilities that you can not even be like, you can be rapping through your mouth wired shut.
That's probably
kind of cool.
A good metaphor actually.
Yeah.
For him. There were 10 Grammy nominations for that album, including Best Album, and it won
Best Rap Album.
It won for Best Rap Album, and I
Yeah.
think some of the songs won as well.
Cool.
My favorite song on that album is Family Business.
That's a good one.
It's very kind of fun.
Yeah, soul.
Yeah,
Soul-y.
I feel like there's not a lot of music made like that. It's like, I would describe, spoiler, so for this episode, we're kind of going to be breaking his career into chunks.
Yeah, eras.
Eras, yeah. So the first era we're going to do we'll call it the graduation era, which is his first 3 albums, College Dropout, Late Registration, and Graduation. And I would kind of describe this music as pretty wholesome. Like, there's references to kind of partying, but it's very lighthearted.
Yeah.
There's comedy songs, and there's kind of
radio
comedy
songs,
lines. Yeah, radio pop.
Yeah.
And there are skits on the albums, and they're just kind of fun.
Yeah,
you know?
I think
And that was him at the time. He was kind of one of the big, in the early 2000s, people who broke the mold of hip-hop as being for gangster rap.
Yeah.
So he was kind of this fashionable little kid who he always says, wore like pink polos and didn't make music about killing or gang violence or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was more wholesome, and he still covered social topics, but it was through a more kind of, in a more radio-friendly way.
Yeah, I think so.
So College Dropout was in 2004, and then his next album was in 2005, Late Registration, continuing on the kind of university theme. It was a very similar style to College Dropout. I prefer it a little bit because I find the songs, I don't know how you'd say, a little bit more polished or orchestral sounding or something like that. Some of the songs on it were Touch the Sky, Gold Digger, which was obviously huge, Heard 'Em Say with Adam Levine of Maroon 5.
There you go.
And Diamonds from Sierra Leone with Jay-Z, probably my favorite from that album.
I had a question.
Sure.
Was it common for hip-hop artists to collaborate with people like Adam Levine?
I don't know.
It seems kind of random to me. Like, it's normalized now. Like,
yeah.
Probably, I was wondering kind of if it was by Kanye to collaborate with.
No, he was definitely on that wave because hip-hop, I guess, in the 2000s, that's when it really hit the radio big time, I think.
Yeah.
That's when the hip-hop artists started becoming the biggest ones in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, there were also those, it would also be like a pop star and a rapper. Like, that was a huge thing. And
Oh, yeah, a little.
so you'd have like Bruno Mars was always collaborating with some rapper, or Kanye did the song E.T. with Katy Perry. So there was that crossover happening.
Yeah.
And now it's just, a given.
It's pretty normal for at least most people's albums will have a song, which is.
Yeah, but you're right. That was definitely kind of the wave of it beginning. Oh, one thing we should also mention for Late Registration is that I think a year later, I think in 2006, he did a live performance of the songs with an orchestra and released it as an album called Late Orchestration.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a theme because he's always, when we say his music kind of transcends hip-hop, the melodies and just kind of the notes of it sometimes do sound very classical and often do work without lyrics pretty well.
Yeah, I think so.
that would be his route as a producer shining through.
Yeah, I think so. Because I find a lot of people that I kind of follow on the internet or people I know, they're really into listening to Kanye music without lyrics. That's where I would be as well.
Well, that's partially also maybe why it goes so viral in memes and things like that.
Yeah.
Because there's always little instrumental moments in the songs, which are kind of interesting, or also just his own ad-libs, often kind of funny noises. Like there are compilations on YouTube, it's like all of Kanye's noises. It's like all his grunts and like shouts through his career, which is kind of funny, but in the moment, it always works.
It works in the song, yeah.
And one theme in his career is using the human voice as the instrument. I watched a cool YouTube analysis of this once about how he did it, but Through the Wire is a great example. It's not so much about the content of the lyrics, it's just kind of using his voice as part of the melody often.
Yeah.
And he does that, we'll probably mention some of the songs he does that through, but
that was the first one, it was on his first album.
Yeah, this is kind of manifested fully in him using a choir and
Jesus
as he
is
does
King,
now,
yeah.
which is kind of interesting. Oh, this is kind of 2005 is when we get the first, I would say, big seminal, controversial moment. Is when he was on a fundraiser for, I think, Hurricane Katrina.
Okay.
And he said, you know, they're with a bunch of other celebrities, and they were all kind of turning the mics to them, and they would say something. And Kanye said that George Bush doesn't care about black people, and then everyone just kind of looked
a bit shocked.
It's kind of funny if you watch the clip. I think he was with Michael Myers.
Okay.
And that's who he's standing beside, and he's just kind of looking around. Like, but yeah, what do we think about that quote? Or it's kind of the beginning of Kanye as a controversial public figure.
I don't know I don't know much about Bush.
Yeah, I think he was probably saying the government response to this
was inadequate
because it was predominantly black area, which was, it's probably true. Republican president.
Yeah.
But this is just kind of a funny quote to parallel with some later political engagement, shall we say.
That's true.
The next album coming is Graduation, which kind of caps off this College Dropout trilogy.
Yes.
Hence the name. I want to say this one has a really great cover art.
I think so as well. It's probably, I like all of his later cover arts as well. They're some of my biggest inspirations for design, because before getting into Kanye's album art, I just I never understood the clashing design.
Yeah.
I was always really matchy, and then I saw his albums and I was like,
well, that's kind of what the whole, I would say, what his whole theme is about.
Yeah,
which is about juxtaposing different things. Yeah. But this one, it was done by an artist called Takashi Murakami, an anime artist. Yeah. A Japanese artist who he later used for the cover of Kids See Ghosts in 2018, and both of those are really awesome covers. Okay. So yeah, I say we're treating these three kind of together because they have similar names, somewhat similar styles, these three albums, and each album cover has the Dropout bear on it. That's what that little bear was. Yeah, and this one, it's animated, very bright colors, and it suits the music. I think so. Which is the poppiest album so far. Yeah, poppy. It's all celebratory, it's all fun, or mostly. And how he describes this music is kind of stadium rap. It was trying to take big stadium pop and rock songs and doing it as hip hop. Okay. And I think he definitely achieved that. Some of the songs from this album, the big hits were Good Life and Stronger with Daft Punk, which was a Daft Punk sample. Mm-hmm. And I think Daft Punk produced some of the songs on this album. Flashing Lights and Can't Tell Me Nothing were also big singles. The story about the Graduation album is that it had kind of been billed commercially as in a feud with 50 Cent was dropping an album the same week, I think, or the same month. His album was called Curtis, and it was kind of billed as a feud because 50 Cent was kind of the typical gangster rapper with pop appeal, and Kanye was kind of the, what would you say, the little hipster kid, essentially, who made different kind of stuff. And Graduation just vastly outperformed it on the charts and in the sales. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the final, I would say, one of the final nails in that kind of rap. Yeah, just like this, I feel like Graduation overcoming Curtis by such a large margin just was like, okay, this is the new hip hop. This is what you can do. You can be more upbeat, less hardcore, and still use these kinds of beats. Because I think it's just really, it's the most interesting track behind any lyrics is hip hop tracks. For sure. I think Graduation's a really underrated album in his kind of discography, because if I go through the songs, even I kind of forget about it sometimes, but then those were all I knew all those songs. They were big hits, right? Yeah. It's probably the closest thing he's made to a pop record. Yeah. I go through the songs and I'm like, wow, these were all, every one of them is super strong, except there's one with Lil Wayne, which I really don't like, called Barry Bonds. But aside from that, it's great. It's a great record. So that was 2007. The same year after that Graduation album, Kanye's mum died from complications due to, I think, a plastic surgery. Oh, okay. Which was unfortunate. As we mentioned, he had a super strong relationship with his mum. And I think around a similar time, or maybe shortly before or after, I don't know. It was late 2007. He broke up with his girlfriend. Yeah, who he's been on and off with since 2002. So those are kind of two big lifestyle hits. Yeah. And that leads him in 2008 to make an album called 808s and Heartbreak, which is a significant departure from anything else he's made before. Yeah. It was all heavily auto-tuned songs, very minimalist. Not even, I mean, it was hip hop, I suppose, but it was not really rapping. It was kind of a very strong precursor to what I don't know if I'd say emotional or sensitive rap that we see the likes of Drake kind of building careers off of now. So it was a very influential album in that way. Some of the songs off of it were Heartless, Love Lockdown, Amazing, Paranoid, and Robocop. And it was kind of a transition from rap into pop, still with the kind of hip hop, I suppose, beats.
Yeah. Some of the content was also Kanye hip hop, I found. The biggest difference is that there were no swear words on it, which I found
there were no
interesting.
swear words on it. It was kind of a breakup album. It was also very radio friendly, or some of the songs anyway, but not in the way that Graduation was. Like, this isn't something that you put on for fun.
Yeah, you're not going to go to a party and hear 808s.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're at like a breakup party or something when you're eating ice cream.
A breakup party?
Yeah.
Those two words don't even go together.
A pity party.
Yeah, a pity party.
Party of one.
For sure. I remember hearing Kanye talk about this album, and he was describing the songs as what he'd been looking for was universal melodies. So he was looking for kind of beats and melodies and rhythms which could work in multiple genres. So he described how Amazing could work as a country song, and Love Lockdown maybe could work as an opera or something like that.
That's really neat.
It is really neat. And I think that describes all his music. You might just have to dig a little bit deeper, but with 808s, everything else is stripped away. So you just get that.
The melody.
Which is what I love about that album.
But that's how most of his songs are. It's like this could work as a pop song, a hip hop song.
I think that's why he has such wide appeal.
Yeah.
For people who genuinely will actually give his music a try. They usually find a song for them because it spans so many different kind of tropes of different types of music, I suppose.
Yeah, but
and
it's all
done
done well.
Even the visuals as well, even the music videos and things like that.
Yeah, I didn't expect Kanye's music videos to be what they were.
What do you mean?
I don't know. The only ones I'd heard about were the controversial ones.
Right.
And so, like, when I watched, like, the Runaway music video or something, I was like...
Yeah. Well, that's like...
Aren't there, like, a bunch of ballerinas in it?
Yeah, it's like an art film, basically.
Yeah, it's just cool.
And Famous is similar. It's also kind of an art film, if slightly exploitative, because it features a lot of waxworks of, like, nude celebrities.
That's the one I was referring to that I said was...
Oh, yeah. Well, we can talk about his music videos maybe as we go through.
2008, we had 808s.
Right.
2000... or did you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I really like that album cover.
Yeah.
It's the one that's just kind of a really cold steel grey with, like, a deflated heart on it. Heart balloon kind of clay thing. And then the left side has just kind of blocks of colour. It was very clean, very minimal, but I think that's when Kanye's at his best, I suppose. Yeah, I really like that. And then from 2008, we have in 2009 probably his most controversial moment. I mean, that's saying something, but one of the big controversial moments that really put him in the role of a villain in the public eye, which was at the 2009 MTV VMAs when Taylor Swift was...
It was her first VMA Awards.
Yeah, when she was just getting big and she was collecting her award for music video of the year, but the one where she's sending little messages to that guy or something, writing them on boards.
You belong with me.
Kanye obviously got up on stage, took the microphone from her and said, "Sorry, Taylor, I'll let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best music videos of all time."
Okay.
Of all time.
But just wait. So you were saying, like, I had heard this story and I was like, that was a great music video. What are you talking about?
You mean Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, that's mean. But then you realized the music video that Beyonce made was the Single Ladies music video.
Yeah. So that's the thing about it. Like, Kanye was right.
He was right.
Because it was the most... It was the best dance, the most famous.
That blew me away. That, like, anything could have even come close to being the Single Ladies.
Let's talk about that incident. It was
unnecessary.
It was unnecessary. It was mean. It was rude.
Yes, very, very rude.
But it was right.
Right.
I think you can describe a lot of Kanye's controversial moments like that. But I think he was also drunk at the time. So
probably.
That's what it is.
It was the wrong thing to do. It was right to vilify him for it.
Right.
But it's just like, I was just so shocked. I was like, everyone in the crowd probably felt similar.
Yeah, awkward.
Yeah.
The clip of Taylor after that happens, she's just kind of like, oh, yeah, I mean, what? Like, she looks kind of lost.
Yeah, so that put him as a villain.
Yeah, well, I read one critic say this once in review of the next album, but it said that 808's kind of was Kanye ostracizing himself from the hip-hop community because it wasn't rap. And that instant at the VMAs, he'd kind of ostracized himself from the pop community, because Taylor Swift was like the golden child and
Mm-hmm.
Kanye is now the big villain. So after some rethinking, some regrouping,
Mm-hmm.
famous story, he went to Hawaii. He got, contacted a lot of other artists: Nicki Minaj, Jay-Z, Elton John, Rihanna, Fergie. The list goes on, really. And
So you just gathered the troops.
gathered the
went
troops.
to
It's kind
Hawaii.
of like an Avengers.
Yeah.
That was kind of it. Yeah, that's what happened. And he made an album called My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy,
Yes.
which is his most critically acclaimed album. It's a great album.
It's a great album.
I like the story about it even as much as the music, about him kind of putting his heads down with a lot of other collaborators and just planning out how can we make the best album ever.
Yeah.
There's so we were working on them today, the signs in the studio from that time.
Yeah.
And they just said like,
No tweeting.
yeah, no tweeting, no Twitter, no blogs, just shut up sometimes. No telling anyone about what we're doing. So
No
it's very
acoustic
secretive.
guitars.
No acoustic guitars in the studio. That's kind of random. It was
Yeah, I
like
know.
no pictures.
Yeah.
So it's very kind of secretive. It paid off because it was a great album, and probably on aggregate most people would say it was his best album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he collaborated with a lot of famous artists on that, and they were featured on the album, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, that album had a ton of features.
Yeah, Lost in the World with Bon Iver.
Right, that's your favorite song from
It's
it?
my favorite song from it, yes. That's because I love Bon Iver.
Yeah, so
But
it's-
also, I just love that album because it's very orchestral. It's the one that you sent me, and I was like, oh, I can appreciate this for the music.
Exactly.
And with, like, kind of, because the lyrics of his songs always kind of throw me off.
Right,
But the music on this is undeniably fantastic.
of course.
Yeah.
This was kind of my entry point into Kanye as well.
Mhm.
I had like some of the songs like Power, that was huge.
Yeah.
I liked that song. And All of the Lights, that was huge, and I liked that song. And I was like, yeah, that was really cool. And then I remember when Yeezus came out, which is the next album,
Mhm.
I listened to that and I was like, this is garbage. And even like the rest of Dark Fantasy I was listening to, I was like, I don't like this. It's too much swearing, because I lived kind of a sheltered, life. And then just the more I listened to it, you started to, for someone who never listened to any rap before, basically,
Yeah.
you started to kind of hear that, oh no, every song has that kind of masterful orchestral melody in it. You
Mhm.
just, like, it was just tough for me to listen to sometimes
Yeah.
because I hadn't gotten used to it. I was also pretty young. But yeah, and then you listen to the other stuff and you're like, then you start to see it and you start to hear it everywhere. So Dark
Mhm.
Fantasy for me was that kind of entry point.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably why it's the most critically acclaimed, because it's the easiest to like.
Yeah.
That and probably College Dropout. So some big songs on that record were, we already said, Power, Lost in the World, which samples Woods from Bon Iver
Mhm.
pretty heavily, and All of the Lights, Dark Fantasy, Runaway, Devil in a New Dress, Monster. Monster was like a giant song because it had Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj, and that was kind of like her one of her big introductions. But yeah, it's a great album. And this is kind of, I think, the clearest example of Kanye working more as like a conductor rather than
Mhm.
like a solo, what would you say, a one-man show.
Yeah, this
'Cause-
was him being basically a producer, but
Yeah,
conductor's a better word for it because he had a part in it. He was the center,
of course.
but then
Kind of pulling the strings. I heard the best description I ever heard of it was that there are two kinds of auteurs. And one kind is the kind of, we mentioned Stanley Kubrick earlier, does everything
Mhm.
by him or herself, has a very clear vision and just does that. And then the other type is the kind of conductor who has a huge troupe and knows how to use people's talents and abilities and stuff. And Kanye is definitely much more the latter,
yeah,
I think.
but
And
they're
on this
equally
album,
is fantastic.
on this record, he definitely is anyway.
Yeah.
He made the Runaway short film for it, which was
Mhm.
about 30 minutes and features most of the songs from the albums in some version.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it is about a alien bird lady who crashes down to Earth,
Mhm.
and there's ballet involved, and there's Kanye's really, really bad acting involved,
Oh,
and
yes.
he's running. Yeah, that's I suppose. What would you say, most artistic film?
Yeah, didn't he only make two? He made Dark Fantasy.
I mean, music videos as well.
Oh, yeah, probably the most artistic.
So 2010, that was a great year for him. Everyone liked that album. Fans liked it. Critics loved it. Kanye is back.
Kanye is back. And so after Dark Fantasy, he said, I'm back. I'm the best in the world. So is my friend, and they made a
Yeah,
new
so
album.
is my friend and previous and mentor and former kind of role model and idol, Jay-Z.
Mhm.
You're right. So they made the album together called Watch the Throne in 2011, which was huge because those are the two biggest names in hip hop at the time.
Yeah.
Some songs on that were Otis, which you said you listened to for the first time today and you liked.
Yeah, it was good. I liked the music video because it was them like deconstructing a really expensive car and then just like zipping around.
Yeah, it was kind of a mockery of luxury almost, like a parody of it. That was kind of that whole album. It was a braggadocio kind of victory lap, I guess you would say.
Yeah, you mentioned when we were discussing the song that they like sampling really expensive songs. So like really popular
they sampled
songs.
Otis Redding, which is why the song's just called that. So even that is a sign of them being at the top of the industry, because not everyone would have been allowed to do that or would have been able to afford that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was expensive.
So they were touring and stuff, making a really big spectacle of
themselves. Sure. It was a big deal. After that, he made an album called Cruel Summer, which was kind of a collaboration album with his music label. Yeah, Good Music, which he'd founded years earlier. Good Music standing for Getting Out Our Dreams. Cute, kind of cringy, kind of like something you'd see like on Facebook. But Kanye's always like that. He always has a little bit of the Facebook mum in him. Like, he always kind of likes those kitschy kind of lyrics. Yeah, Cruel Summer was just kind of what it is. Around this time was also when he started turning to fashion a lot more. And trying to get into the fashion world and really trying to establish himself outside of music.
Yeah, so he went and lived in Paris for a while. Had a flat there.
Yeah.
Known to visit the Louvre.
Yeah, multiple times. Just before that, I think between 2008 and 2010, he'd had a kind of a fashion line which never launched.
Okay.
It was called Pastel.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he'd always been kind of into fashion a lot. You know, Louis Vuitton, he was kind of a big deal for introducing the idea of rappers wearing luxury clothing, which now everyone always raps about, those kind of brands. And that's huge in streetwear. But he was really at the forefront of merging, what would you say, streetwear with luxury. Yeah,
because like you think, okay, so rappers wear Gucci, Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, but that wasn't always the case.
Yeah, but he's making it be people who are expensive people, like Louis Vuitton people wearing streetwear. Yeah. That's what he did. He brought like grungy sweaters.
Both of those things he did.
Yeah.
And probably, because I think another cool way of looking at Kanye's career and his life is defining it through his relationships. So another good, very famous relationship he has is with his friend Virgil Abloh, who's now kind of the head of Louis Vuitton.
And Louis Vuitton, yeah.
Yeah, who had the brand Off-White, and he's probably the best exemplary of streetwear and luxury because of those things. But he and Kanye had been big friends. They were learning about, I think they were in France together. They were. Yeah, so Kanye had Pastel. He'd done some work with Nike, doing the kind of somewhat typical rapper collaborates with a streetwear brand. Yep. They'd made shoes together. But Kanye essentially was unhappy with
how Nike was treating him. Maybe they weren't giving him the freedom he wanted, the money he wanted.
Yeah, I think it was both those things.
Probably.
I think they just weren't taking him very seriously, and Kanye's someone who likes to be taken seriously.
Yeah, so Kanye went, Adidas, you're a bit underrepresented.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's why Yeezy is affiliated with Adidas and not Nike, I suppose, because they, I think, just gave him what he wanted, which is still 100% ownership of the Yeezy brand, which is a big deal. Yeah. But getting back to the music, so in 2013 he made his another big departure from dark fantasy, which was Yeezus, which was ultra abrasive, ultra industrial, hardcore, very, very angry. And mostly solo. It has a couple features, but it's not anywhere near as collaborative as dark fantasy was.
Yeah, we didn't mention like these three albums. This is another era, 808s, dark fantasy, and Yeezus. Yeah. So that's another...
We're calling that an era.
An era, because they're all kind of experimental. So Yeezus is very angry, solo. Dark fantasy was his first collab, and 808s was no swears, slow jams.
Yeah.
Vibes.
Not slow jams, but yeah, I guess you'd say sad.
Sad, yeah.
Very emotional and auto-tune heavy. So I suppose we could call that era like the artistic era or something, because each album had a very clear vision and it was very almost conceptual in its...
execution.
Yeah, in his execution.
I mean, he made a movie for one of them, fashion brand.
Yeah.
Came up with the last one.
Yeah. Yeezus, another one of my favorite albums of his. At first, I listened to it and I thought, this is just terrible. I think I probably thought something along the lines of, this is the devil's music. But I came around to it pretty quickly, and yeah, now I love it. Some of the key songs from that one were New Slaves, Blood on the Leaves, On Sight, and Hold My Liquor, and Bound 2. This is also, just an aside, probably the first example, I think, of him really treating the lyrics of his songs as an afterthought. Like there are stories about some of these songs, he just kind of wrote the lyrics, slapped them on a few weeks before recording or before release or whatever, which is a trend which is only kind of magnified in his most recent albums.
This was the first time, well, I don't know, this is the first time that I've seen that it was explicitly anti-consumerist. Yeah. So the whole aesthetic was luxury, Paris, architecture, design. Yeah. Then the lyrics were, it was like kind of, it was exposing them, I guess. Yeah,
exposing the idea of consumerism. And it's not the first time, because he had, in a lot of his earlier albums, there were lyrics kind of poking fun at the materialism of hip-hop.
Yeah.
Basically, All Falls Down is a good example, which was popular. But it's the first time, one, the album was about that, and also he did it in a way that wasn't comedic. Yes. It was ultra serious. There's no comedic lines on this album.
No.
Something about croissants, but I think that's just an example of him throwing the lyrics together. I think the background for this album was he was angry at his attempts to transition from musician to fashion designer being kind of shut down, and the difficulty he was finding entering that industry for various reasons.
It was just like at the very beginning, people made it hard for him to enter into being a rapper. They were like, no, you're just a producer, stick with that. But then he became a rapper and became the world's biggest rapper. And similar with fashion. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. That's a good parallel to make.
Yeah.
And now probably similar when he says, I want to do a church, or I want to make homes. There's always that kind of thing. This is, I think, the Yeezus mini era, I guess you would say, is, I think, the most inspirational Kanye time, because it was him just saying, I don't care what anyone thinks. He was saying that his whole life, which is why he dropped out of college and why he did this and this. But yeah, I don't care what anyone thinks. I will do this. But for now, I'm just kind of angry that it's taking me so long, which is why some of the lines are... And it's also about class, about classism, about classism being the new racism, and about his own struggles with both those things.
Yeah.
In the industry and outside of the industry. I love this album. Like, it starts with the most abrasive possible sound, and it's just like a reflex from Dark Fantasy, which was you hear it and you're like, oh wow, that's really nice. And then I think you start listening to Yeezus, you're like, ugh. Because it starts with
grinding gears.
Yeah, like a really ugly, almost like electronic Velcro. That's what it sounds like at the start of On Sight. And he has the line, I think in that song or in one of the early songs, it says, as soon as they like you, make them unlike you. So that's kind of an example of him being a little bit contrarian and kind of deliberately defying, I guess you would say, public appeal.
Yeah.
But also doing what he wants in spite of what other people would maybe prefer, which is sometimes annoying as a fan of his, but more often rewarding. Very, very high self-confidence. This is also, I think, around the time when he started comparing himself to
Steve
Jobs, Walt Disney. The album's called Yeezus, so that was, inflammatory.
Yes, refers to himself as the nucleus of society.
Yeah, he has a song on the album called I Am a God. Yeah. So it was very in your face and kind of deliberate. And I think this is where it really started, that he would start doing those things a little bit just for publicity purposes, to drum up support, or to drum up interest rather, as we've seen later with, he kind of times his returns to Twitter and his controversial statements with album releases.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just formulaic marketing.
But I think that's super modern. It's just like...
Oh, he definitely pioneered that.
Yeah.
For sure. And Trump got elected like that. You time your kind of crazy statements and you're controlling the media narrative to your benefit.
Exactly, because he was probably the first all media is good media. Like, all coverage is good coverage, you know what I mean?
In the social media era, you mean?
Yeah.
I suppose so.
So it's like preached in marketing class now. It's like, if you're in the media, it's usually good.
I suppose so, yeah. He's a good example of it anyway. But so this is really when Kanye has a huge ego, started entering or became really prevalent in society as just like a meme and people's first thought when you hear of Kanye.
Yeah, I think so.
Because of the name of the album and because of the song I Am a God and some of the statements around it. What do we think to that? Is it just his previously congratulated and praised self-confidence turned up too far, maybe? To arrogance or to, egotism?
I feel like it's just kind of trying to think. Because, like, the message of the album was...
It was not that, right?
It was not that.
And even the song I Am a God, it was not that. It was still declaring his kind of Christianity on the album.
I think it's his...
On the song.
His love of juxtaposition just maybe gone so far that people can't grasp it.
I think it's an empowerment thing.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like a Buddhist I'm a god, you're a god, we're all gods. Because it was about, new slaves. He's kind of frustrated at, what would you say?
The oppression that comes from consumerism, I
Yeah,
imagine.
and that kind of, I guess you would say, like sheep mentality and people waiting in line. This is an irony given what his shoes do to people. I think is a big irony, but I think that was the message. Yeah, because it's not like he was denouncing his Christianity or anything through it. There's a lyric in the song "I Am a God" which says something like, it says that Jesus is still above him, basically.
Do you think he's saying like people are viewing him as a god?
Could have been.
Because he's such a big idol. Like,
could have been. We could talk about that because the messages of the albums we haven't really talked about so far, but
yeah.
Dark Fantasy was for sure a huge statement on fame all the way through. The kind of one of the interesting things about that album is whoever's speaking, the speaker of the songs is always kind of ambiguous, and you often don't know if it's kind of a character or Kanye himself or even a voice for society. Often speaking, like there's a lot of braggadocio on that album, like there is in a lot of his, but there's also a lot of humility, repentance, I would say, and self-awareness for sure.
Yeah.
But this kind of characterizes all his music. Is you see it on the cover for the next album, The Life of Pablo, which is a love of fame, the good life, as one of his songs is called.
Yeah.
Partying, drugs, luxury, all those things, and also a kind of yearning for a simpler, more family-based, community-based, trust-based lifestyle where he can, trust the people around him is a big deal.
Yeah. I feel like the thing with Kanye is you can't take a song out of context, like out of the context of the album.
Yeah.
Because just thinking about it now, I'm like, just based on my values, I wouldn't be like, hey, go listen to this song. But I'd be like, look at this album.
Yeah, definitely.
Look at, because they have a message which is usually positive, anti-consumerist, anti-fame, or like yearning for a simpler, like.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of important to say, like, don't take a song out of context. Because if you take I Am a God out of context, then it's kind of like his ego is really out of control.
But he's always kind of, I like how he always kind of personifies his ego in the songs. So it's almost like sometimes he often has a conversation with himself.
Yeah.
And there are little arcs through the albums. From Here to Here, he's really reveling in, what would you say, the kind of worldly luxuries that come with fame and fortune. And then From Here to Here, he's kind of meditating on his previous sins or his vices. We see that on Runaway, very apologetic song about his behavior towards women. And then later on, he had a song called Violent Crimes. I think having a family has also changed him a lot.
Yeah, it made him think I shouldn't be making these songs, even if it's not what I truly feel.
Yeah.
Making them encourages or enables other people, so I need to make sure everything represents who I truly am.
For sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, after Yeezus, which was very high art inspired, architecture and product and
hardcore.
Yeah. He
had his first daughter.
Before Yeezus, around that time he married Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
Kanye and the Kardashians.
Yeah.
From what we've described of him so far and his kind of struggles with fame and drugs and that side of life in the public eye, it doesn't sound like an immediately good fit.
No,
and there were definitely
thrown into literally the most famous family.
Yeah, and I remember there were most of the commentary at the time of their marriage was, these two won't last.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it's been about 6-7 years and they seem to be in love, which...
It's rare and...
Yeah, it is definitely rare and it's probably not what you would think on face value.
No.
But one thing about Kanye I always find is that for all his kind of shortcomings and poor behavior, I always think of him as quite an honest person. And I always think of him as not really a fan of having deceit or two-faced people around him.
True.
So there must be a kind of more earnest, authentic side to the Kardashians. I mean, all we know of them is their kind of on-screen personas. Yeah. So who knows what people are really like behind cameras.
That's the thing. And I'm imagining if you're as famous as Kim Kardashian and as famous as Kanye West, you couldn't marry anyone else. Like, no one else would understand the
That's a good
pressure.
point. That's a good point. They probably bonded over that.
Yeah.
I know they'd been friends for a long time before they got married. I know that he'd known her for a while. So, yeah, I think it's a good couple.
Yeah.
She seems to be good for him, and probably vice versa. And they seem to have a nice family and a nice home now. It doesn't make sense that perhaps she helps him deal with fame and get away from the public eye a little bit, but perhaps she does that.
I don't know, because it's like they both kind of crave fame, but it's just like I feel like I think
Hmm. Well, Kanye definitely wants influence.
The influence is
Yeah.
the better word for it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it's like they're helping each other. They're not probably the best psychologists for one another, but there's a bond that's probably really deep that like we can't
love.
understand.
True love defies logic. So after Yeezus,
Alright.
now married and with kids, he launches the Yeezy lines and the Yeezy shoes, which are really incredibly popular.
Yeah.
I think it was around the same time, actually.
Yeah.
The shoes, especially the Yeezy Boost 350s, are, we all know, very famous and had a big influence on, what would you say, shoes?
Sneaker. Even design, yeah.
Sneaker culture.
Because it's like, before this, sneakers, this is my random fashion critique, were very sleek, like Vans were big, Converse, and then he was like, dad shoes are the new thing. Really chunky.
Later on, he definitely, one thing I guess
that, the Yeezy, the original ones weren't dad sneakers, but
they were also minimalist and kind of yoga inspired. One thing that I always find interesting about the kind of talk surrounding Kanye is you have the people who say he's just a hack and he's garbage and the shoes are ugly or whatever, and then you have the people who say he's so far ahead of his time, this is crazy. But I think the latter people are usually closer to the truth. But I often don't think Kanye is significantly ahead of his time.
I think it's just a little bit of a step ahead.
Yeah,
he's a trendsetter.
That's all you have to be, is a little bit ahead of the time.
Yeah.
And there's kind of functionally no difference between creating a trend out of nothing and hopping on it when it's pretty early and popularizing it, which I think more like what he does. Because those shoes didn't come out of nowhere.
Right.
There were minimalist shoes like that by both Nike and Adidas, but he kind of made the silhouette, the most famous thing.
Recognizable, yeah.
Yeah, recognizable.
He kind of like expanded like the bigger sole. He was like, we're gonna make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
just
true.
to make it more
the
identifiable.
color scheme as well.
Yeah.
Earth tones and kind of neutrals.
The uniform.
Like what kind of clothes do you mean?
I just mean green t-shirt, khakis.
Oh.
Just stuff like that. He made it cool.
Oh, you mean like military uniform?
I mean that, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. The first few Yeezy seasons were really militaristic, almost dystopian. Yeah. They were cool. They definitely had public appeal. And the new ones, I think, have gone a little bit more fashion. So I think the translation of that is most people don't understand it. Yeah. But that's the case with most fashion kind of runways.
It's really high concept.
Yeah. Between 2013 and 2016, his two albums, he released a few singles. One of them was called Only One, which was kind of a lullaby for his daughter at the time. Yep. Not at the time, for his daughter, his first daughter, and it was from the perspective of his mother from the afterlife. So that's very sentimental.
It's a very sad song.
Yeah, but it's happy though.
It's happy, yeah.
I'd call it a comforting song.
Yeah.
It's actually one of my favorites of his. He also released almost the exact opposite kind of song called All Day, which I love, but which is very hardcore hip-hop, I suppose you'd call it.
Yeah.
And supposedly had around a whole album with Sir Paul McCartney, which never released, which is another thing about his career. Kanye probably has more music which he never released than a lot of musicians have, which they do release, and definitely better stuff which he never released, which other musicians would have killed to produce.
I had a thought when we were talking about the Paul McCartney alleged album that wasn't released or whatever. Years from now, it's gonna be like Shakespeare. It's gonna be like, did he even write all this stuff? Like, it's gonna be such a myth around him and his
Kanye?
work. Yeah. Because I feel like this stuff will be exposed and it'll be like, people who remember this time, they'll be like, he didn't release that. That's not true. But then it's like the scientists or whatever, like, no, like it was his. Like it was actually his carbon dating the tracks or whatever.
Yeah. We do have a lot of internet recordings of things now though.
Yeah, I know. But it's just like, I feel like there'll be a bit of a myth around him.
Yeah, we're always hoping for new Kanye music to leak, no matter from when it was made. Yeah. Because some of his leaks are my favorite songs, which never...
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get a bit into that later.
Officially released.
So there's all those singles, alleged albums.
Yeah, the song 4 or 5 Seconds, that had Paul McCartney on it. But that was the only thing that I think ever officially released. And then in 2016, he made an album called The Life of Pablo. Yes. Which was sprawling. It has about 20 songs once all is said and done, because this is the first example of him, what would you say, experimenting with the actual release structure of an album. Yes. Where it was more of the style of a video game where you can release it and then patch it afterwards. So because people are now streaming rather than, most...
Buying an album.
Yeah, most people aren't buying physical CDs anymore. We're all just streaming. So you can fix it, add new songs, fix songs, after the fact,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of cool.
I
I
think
was
it's
really
neat.
on board with that at the time. I was like, well, that's new. That's neat. And in hindsight, I don't think it's probably not a good thing for the consumer, for the listener, but it's probably good for the artist because they can maybe even respond to some public opinion, say,
I think it's more fun, more interactive.
Yeah, it is interactive.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how that's like the most digital album. Then Yeezus was like known for its CD cover art, which was just the red square.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, but then I just was thinking about Life of Pablo. It's the most digital album cover you've ever seen.
Which is kind of an orange color and just a bunch of text all kind of glitched and then some photos. Yeah.
Then Yeezus was just a red square, super minimalist, which kind of goes, we were discussing how it was a critique of...
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was kind of a play off like a bootleg record, just a red sticker and no cover art.
Yeah.
He was also inspired by some art piece from that. He was very heavily inspired by some art piece. It's almost identical. I don't remember what it was though. So yeah, The Life of Pablo came out. It was originally, he had a few names for it, which he kind of went through, and there were the track lists was all kind of in flux until the very end, and so were the features, and so were which versions of the songs, and it was being mixed right up to the last second, and it came out, he missed his release date by a couple days.
Yeah.
I remember following that release, and I was like, what's going on? This is so unprofessional, but I think this is just the beginning of what we can call a new era, which is something like the synthesis era, or the kind of a messier time of production for him.
Yeah,
where
mental health era.
Yeah, nothing is as kind of laser focused as it was before.
Yeah. Because the other ones were like every song, every element was...
Well, it was professional.
Very professional.
It was a professional kind of release structure. Some songs went on there were singles and there were performances, there were music videos, and, he's wearing suits all the time and stuff like that. And now he's kind of thrown that away and almost seems like he's struggling to keep up with it. This is almost definitely because of his other endeavors now. Like the fashion's probably taken up so much of his time.
Yeah, he's married now.
Yeah, he's married with kids, so can't work on stuff all the time. But some of the key songs from this album were Ultralight Beam, Waves, Saint Pablo, Father Stretch My Hand, and Famous. Like we said, it's kind of a synthesis of his previous music styles. There's some auto-tune, there's some gospel, there's some soul, there's some just kind of straight rap, and it sounds very kind of contemporary hip hop, to be honest. It's not a huge conceptual departure from that, but it's one of my favorites from his. I think it's a great album, and there's such a big variation along the songs.
Yeah, and the year that was released was the first time his mental health was called into question, correct? And he was hospitalized.
Yeah, I think big time.
Yeah.
Big time called into question, because during the tour for this album, well, let's say around the release, there was some questionable tweets from him around things like Bill Cosby's perceived innocence on Kanye's part. So some questionable tweets like that. There was some more Taylor Swift controversy. He kind of dug that up again because in one of the songs he had a questionable line about her, which we won't mention on air. And then on the tour, he was very kind of...
wasn't he just acting really weird on stage and stuff?
It was a frequent occurrence for him to be kind of taking the mic and ranting about various things, so things were getting to him. And then in November 2016 he was hospitalized, and that kind of leads into our discussion on him as a good case study for modern fame, because such a life can't be healthy for people.
No.
And we see it all the time with like child stars. It's how many of those guys come out unscathed? Not many, because it's not a good environment to kind of grow up in or even to be in for a long time. And Kanye, I think not at all in a derogatory way, we can say he's very childlike. He's very kind of impulsive and... I feel
like he's open and influenceable.
Yeah, very influenceable.
Impressionable.
Yeah, impressionable and kind of... He has a real lust for life.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, and he gets very excited about topics, and he's also very passionate and very emotional, and this is all what contributes to him making great art, I think. He's always calls himself at the time he was the 38-year-old, 8-year-old and stuff like that.
Okay.
So he says lines like that, and I think it's true, and I think for that kind of personality, he calls himself an HSP, highly sensitive person. Yeah. It was for sure
just
tough.
Too much. Yeah. It doesn't excuse any of his behavior in my, I just wanted to say that. shouldn't be misogynistic, or
You think he's misogynistic?
I don't know a ton about him, but I think he is.
Right, just from the lyrics?
Just from the lyrics.
I've heard him...
I don't think you can publish something like that.
Yeah.
Like, we had this discussion today about film directors writing characters that are evil, but I'm like, I think that's different than publishing a lyric that's misogynistic.
Right, we were having the discussion because Timothy Chalamet recently, there was a minor controversy on Twitter where he said a slur in a play from a few years ago, and people dug it up and were like, this is ridiculous, cancel him. And we were thinking, well, that's a very dangerous line of thinking. Not only is that completely okay for people to say things like that in fiction.
Yes, it was a script, like he was reading a script.
But it's completely necessary to tell stories of oppression or of any kind of truth, because history and the current world is full of evil and offensive language, for sure, offensive acts, definitely.
Yeah.
So if you can't portray those through art, that kind of censorship is very wrong. But that's a bit of a detour.
Yeah, but I just want to say this isn't the same thing.
No, well, you're talking about any kind of misogyny in Kanye's lyrics, and I think that's a product of hip hop, most definitely.
Yeah.
You know, his kind of upbringing, and that's the culture, but definitely also that doesn't absolve it of criticism.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Like, I don't think him supporting Trump is okay, or him... I didn't know he...
You're skipping ahead.
Sorry. I didn't think tweeting saying Bill Cosby is innocent. I didn't know he did that, but
I feel like that, if I recall, this was at a time when like it hadn't come out that he was definitely guilty.
I still...
Kanye was just saying, I don't know about these allegations, kind of.
I guess. I don't know.
But then I don't know if he ever went back on that statement, so it could still hold.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I'm just saying nothing excuses that.
So hospitalized in 2016 when it all kind of came to a peak, and he kind of got away from the public eye for a while, which is definitely a good move. Stayed off Twitter and then came back around 2018, I think maybe the end of 2017. And how did he come back? By posting some pictures of himself with Make America Great Again hats and publicly kind of pronouncing his support for Trump, who is now president. And he made the album Yay in 2018, which was kind of similarly
thrown together.
Yeah, kind of thrown together, I would say. It's still a good album. It was very short. I would also say that this kind of era is characterized by short songs.
Yeah, for
which
sure.
is maybe indicative of an attention span kind of waning and being in multiple places at once and finding it hard to focus on one thing.
Super modern, though. Like, people's attention spans are, 10 seconds? So it's, like, cool.
And not really following through with ideas all the way through to a 7-minute song as he perhaps once would have. So he made a lot of controversial waves in 2018, support for Trump, meeting with Trump in the White House, going on TMZ, and among other things, saying that he thought slavery was something of a choice, that 400 years of slavery was a choice.
He did say that.
I think that to say that Kanye literally thinks that slaves chose slavery was a choice is some kind of deliberate misinterpretation of what he meant, because I don't think that's not what he meant. I think it was, we mentioned his song New Slaves. I think this is something of a continuation of that idea, which is that I think it was something a little bit more like we, meaning the African American community in the US, had not gotten out of the kind of slave mentality. That's how he considered politics to be. He was saying, why does every black man have to be a Democrat? And that was kind of the root of his support for Trump. It wasn't any kind of policy love. It wasn't any kind of agreement with anything Trump particularly said, I don't think.
Yeah.
That was it. I think it was, in my opinion, we do our armchair analysis. Yeah. I think it was just a kind of, I'm going to do something which people say I shouldn't.
Yeah. Then he said that, and he said that just kind of as a thing, like, I'm going to say this because, like, he thought it would get his message across as to why he was supporting Trump, maybe, but then it didn't.
No one thinks that, right? Everyone's like, well, why would Trump support him? Why would Kanye support him? He's a racist.
Yeah.
And especially, this is the same guy who said that George Bush doesn't care about black people, and now he's going to go out and endorse Trump. Like, this doesn't make any sense. But I really think he was just endorsing Trump from a standpoint of, I like how in America anyone can be president. And he likes the story of Trump as being against the odds, not having a ton of funding, not being
wasn't he saying like Kanye 2020 or whatever?
not being a career politician. Yeah, we forgot to mention that he announced that he would run for president at some point, which hasn't happened yet. But
correct.
I think his endorsement of Trump is just an example of that. It's like he likes the idea that people can break out of their boxes.
Okay.
And Trump wasn't a politician, and he won the presidency, and that's the kind of thing that Kanye likes. So he probably found the story inspiring.
Okay.
I think it was very irresponsible of him to do that, because Kanye has a huge following, and he never even made that clear. He just kind of wore the hat and said "screw you" to everyone else.
Yeah. Kind
of thing, and even maybe disrespectful to the kind of hip hop community. Yeah. Which maybe raised him, but then Kanye would respond and say, I don't have an obligation to do anything or vote any kind of way. Yeah. It's probably the most interesting thing I find about his kind of career outside of the music is that now he seems, or in this period definitely, he was really the embodiment of what I would call modern contrarianism. Yes. Like, it's not cool to be mainstream. It's not cool to have any kind of basic accepted opinions, be they political or artistic or cultural, whatever. Yeah, just going against anything. You go against the grain for the sake of it, and sometimes kind of even if it's a contradiction to your genuine beliefs. Yeah. Like and your interests. What would you say? Cutting off your nose to spite your face. That was kind of what it was. Yeah. I think. But that was the Trump support. Does that taint your opinion of Kanye a lot? A lot of things did. Oh. I mean, like, I have to do a lot of... I would never praise him as a person or, like, use him as a role model, in my opinion. No. But there's lessons to be extracted from his life. Right. So there's parts of his behavior which are admirable. Yes. And there are parts of which are worthy of criticism. Yes. Or even... deplorable. Even deplorable, if you want to say that. But for me, when people talk about separating the art from the artist, I do it just really, really easily. Yeah. Like, unless the music and the lyrics are about Trump or about, something really terrible, I just find it easy. And even then, I don't listen for the lyrics anyway. So for me, that's kind of where I'm at. Unless the person is actually terrible and I'd feel bad supporting them financially by streaming their songs. Yeah. But I don't feel, Yeah. But I guess what you could mean is, like, how can I say I like what he's saying about, because he has some environmental messaging and some strong, like, he's done good things for social justice and stuff, but then it's like he at the same time supports someone who I completely oppose. It's just like it's just a weird situation, I think, and very modern, being like, I feel like so many people or so many, everything has virtues and everything has, like, what's the opposite of a virtue? A vice? Yeah, I guess. Okay. I feel that's really... Everything has pros and cons, you mean? Yeah. Well... But we expect everything to be just pros. True. Especially with people. Good point. It's like Timothy Chalamet read this script. It's like, it's impossible to be perfect. But that wasn't making him imperfect. No, just reading a script. It was the first example of, like... A controversy? Of a controversy that came to my mind because we were talking about it. But, like, nobody's perfect, and it doesn't mean they can't be the leader of a movement. Kanye is a bit different, but, like, Leonardo DiCaprio, it's like he can be the leader of an environmental movement if he wants to. He hasn't done anything crazy. He owns a jet or whatever, but it's just like, I think there's a really big expectation on people, a really big pressure to be perfect because maybe people are portrayed as such, or I know what you mean. As imperfect. I know what you mean. Portrayed as Kanye, so it's just like. So you say Leo with the environment because it's kind of like people feeling very a lot of positive emotions towards him when he, speaks at the UN or makes a movie about the environment or something, but then feeling almost betrayed when he flies in his private jet. You're saying that's similar to Kanye being kind of an icon for free thought and non-conformism, let's say, and also for things like the empowerment and general rights of African Americans, and then befriending Trump. You're saying those things are similar? Yeah. I guess those things are similar, but he just should have made it clear about why he likes Trump. And I think kind of if you have that kind of platform, you don't have it's a responsibility to make it very clear which policies you support and which you just are not talking about at all.
Yeah, I think so.
So in 2018, he was kind of in Wyoming, and he made these 5 albums in 5 weeks, or released 5 albums in 5 weeks.
Yes.
One of which he was on, one of which was his, which was called Yay, and one of which he collabed with Kid Cudi, and they both made it. And then the other 3 he produced. They were all pretty good. Kids See Ghosts, the one with Kid Cudi, was my favorite.
Yeah, mine. Well, I really liked Yay as well, but those I liked both of them. I think they're the only two I listened to though. So
his music had kind of a mental health focus definitely here.
Yeah.
He talked about him escaping from the sunken place, which was his name for, I think, where he was hospitalized or maybe his psychological state at that point.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a vague spirituality. I wouldn't call it Christian because there were no references to God or Jesus. No. But it was a kind of vague, all good things will come, stay strong, mental health,
something greater,
spirituality thing. He was also very public about his diagnosis as bipolar. And some of the songs from that album were Ghost Town, Violent Crimes, and it was only a 7-song album, so it was kind of short, but those were great songs. It had some pretty bad lows as well, I thought. Some of the songs were kind of slapped together. I thought the mixing wasn't very good. The lyrics were kind of, again, an afterthought. But for the most part, it was good. Kids See Ghosts probably being the more polished record of the 5.
Even just the album art, which was made by the same guy who made Graduation. Then you cut to Yee, where it was a picture he snapped on his phone on the way to the release party.
Yeah, true. And again, what I was referring to when I said Kanye has kind of always had an aspect of being a Facebook mum. That quote on the Yay album cover.
I hate, or what is it?
Yeah, it's like, I hate being bipolar. I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
That's. I'm pretty sure I've seen that on a meme with some with some minions around it.
Yeah.
So he's always had that kind of aspect. That was 2018, and now 2019 was his next album. Jesus is King. Because
2019 was his next album, Yandhi.
Yeah, should we talk about that? He had kind of a canned album which never released between 2018 and 2019, which was called Yandhi, which was, I guess, kind of like Yeezus, but this time it's Yandhi. So it would have been almost a spiritual successor, but like a parallel with that album, I suppose. Yeah. Because he even released the album cover art for it and a release date, or maybe 2. And then it just never...
No, there was a release date. It was like December 2018 or something.
I don't remember. And then it never came out. He pushed it a couple times and it never came out. And there are leaks of the songs, and a lot of them are really, really good. Yes. With, again, not Christian, but wholesome. Kids See Ghost style kind of positivity, spirituality, meditative kind of stuff. And remember, he talked about he's going to Africa to record, and there were going to be wildlife sounds. And I was really, really excited for that album, and then it just never came out. And some of the songs were reworked for Jesus is King, the 2019 album, but they just sound worse because
it wasn't as thought through.
Not because. Okay, so Jesus is King in 2019. What did you think of that album? You're the Christian. I know the Christians were a big fan of that. They were playing it in church, right?
Fan of it, yeah. Probably the worst of his albums.
Yeah, probably was. But the thing is, like, it wasn't because it was a Christian album or the lyrics were Christian or whatever, because I listened to a lot of Christian music. It's just because the lyrics were bad. And the music was kind of bad a lot of the way through.
It's like, had he even released Yandhi with Christian lyrics on top, it would have been better. Yeah. But it was like, they were so bad that it took away from the...
Closed on Sunday.
If you mention Chick-fil-A like 15 times in a song, it's not going to be a bop.
Yeah, some of the lyrics were quite bad. I think
it was, if any other artist had released that album, it would have been great.
True, but maybe our expectations are higher for him.
It was the hype. Even just like we went to see Jesus is King, the movie.
Oh yeah, so he released a little IMAX movie, 25 minutes kind of imagery thing.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, the hype around it was so big, but even the first 25 seconds of it were so hyped. Like,
Yeah, I was really excited.
It made our expectations, which were already high, skyrocket. And we thought they were justified.
Right.
So we were like, oh, yes, like our expectations are justified, validated. Let's go. It was like this really epic intro to the album, which we hadn't heard yet because it wasn't going to release till the next day. But then it fell apart.
Yeah, because that song, Selah, which was the opening,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great song.
It's a great song.
The Yandi version and the Jesus is King version.
Yeah.
I prefer the Yandi version, but the Jesus King version is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Has his choir doing the hallelujahs. It's really epic.
Yeah.
But most of the other songs for the album, well, nothing lived up to that, which for me felt like it was just really kind of hype, get up.
It was a really good song.
Yeah.
Then
Use This
nothing
Gospel
else.
was pretty good, but
Yeah,
it was just kind of a worse version of the Yandi version,
Mm-hmm.
I think. So I was kind of disappointed in that. But yeah, let's talk about the whole Kanye born again Christian thing.
Yeah. He's always been a Christian.
Yeah, he's always been a Christian.
Like, wasn't A Life of Pablo supposed to be, he's like, this is going to be my gospel album?
Yeah, he said that.
So then it wasn't. But then this one, it was like, okay, this is his gospel album. It's called Jesus is King. It's not trying to even be ironic or there's no shadow. It's just very clear.
One thing we noticed at the time of its release was that a lot of the Kanye song or albums are named after him in some way.
Mm-hmm.
College Dropout is referring to him, and then the next two, Late Registration and Graduation, are also about his story. 808s and Heartbreak is his heartbreak.
Yeah.
It's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and Jesus is him, and The Life of Pablo was kind of a nickname. Pablo was for him, and then Ye was for him.
Yeah.
And then this one just says Jesus is King, so it's humble.
It's not. There's no juxtaposition in this one.
It's just not about him,
cut.
which is something I love, and that's what I thought we were getting. Just kind of a humble gospel album with some hip hop influences,
by him, which I think would be great, and I feel like he'll still do another one.
I think that's why I'm hopeful, because
I think this one was like he's just kind of, his mental health is just recovering, and so he's like, yes, I'm going to do this, but he rushed it, which is not something he does well. He does well when he rushes, but it's just like it's not as well. Like Ye wasn't his best album.
Right.
It was a little bit too rushed. This one was even more too rushed.
Yeah. But what do we think about the whole Sunday service thing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's got a whole choir and they're performing covers of his songs or covers of pop songs or traditional gospel or Christian songs. And Kanye's whole kind of lifestyle change, which seems quite comprehensive. Do we think it's good for him? Do we think it's good creatively or for his mental health or for his family?
Good for society.
Yeah.
It's good for society because what he's preaching is returning to tradition.
Here's my thoughts on it.
He has a farm now, is what I wanted to like get at, which I think is good.
Yeah, he's definitely espousing those kind of degrowth ideals. I remember him just saying in an interview with, I think, Zane Lowe. Zane was like, what, so the LA life was too fast for you? And Kanye's like, exactly. I wanted to slow down a little bit, which is admirable, for sure. Yeah. Not everyone has the resources to buy a huge ranch and kind of, but most people would. So good for him. I think Christianity has definitely helped him, for sure. He seems to be committed to it 100%, which what I find interesting about that, or even good about that, is that how many other artists are so openly, not even religious, but devoted to anything, faithful to anything, and will be so honest about their own mental health, their own what makes them tick, and their own kind of ambitions, goals, and flaws, as Kanye kind of is now.
Yeah, that's true, because it's like, I'm just thinking of Justin Bieber, who's always from the beginning, and he's never, no matter what his struggles were, he's never said, I'm not a Christian anymore, but he's also never just been as honest as Kanye has been. And
well, he's never made a Christian album, right?
Yeah.
That kind
of thing. Had a song or two. But
not saying that every Christian has to.
No.
But it's nice to see
someone so dedicated.
Should I say it's impressive to see someone who was at the top of fame and of hip hop, which is the biggest genre, just go completely out of left field and make a gospel album. I think that's neat and deserves praise.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with Jesus is King is the associated physical So yeah, the physical complex, which is the church or the moving church,
Yeah.
which I think is interesting because it's rare that people establish something physical.
Yeah,
So with like Life of Pablo, it was all digital, but it's cool that he's making something physical, which is very a degrowth idea, gathering people, building community.
And singing together.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think, and people think it's kind of controversial that he would start a church, but it's just like, I think worship, it never had to have lyrics. It never, like, the lyrics don't have to be explicitly religious.
Okay.
It's about like lifting your voice.
Yeah.
I feel like, so if he's covering, say, like a Beatles song,
Right.
and they're doing it, it's the direction of the
Direction
energy,
of the sound. Good
of
point.
the sound, yeah.
But at the same time, all the lyrics are very Christian.
Yes.
And he's covering his old songs, but making them Christian.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of worries me because he kind of hinted that he might eventually pull them all from streaming services,
Yeah.
or replace them with the Christian versions. I'm like, no, Kanye, please don't. Put out new music if you know, I'd welcome that, but like, don't take them off. In the Bible, it says the church is not a place, right?
Yeah.
It's about people coming
the
together.
Community, yeah.
And the choir is kind of the perfect instrument for him, as, you know, kind of a group of human voices. I don't know how involved he is in arranging the songs, but he's also been doing things like writing those operas,
Yeah.
dressing up in all chrome. So in a way, it does look kind of strange. What would you say to criticism that this is kind of cult-like, the Sunday services?
I think we'll just have to kind of see where it goes.
Wait and see.
Because it's just like, he's such a sporadic person. It's hard to tell.
The thing with me is, I see why people think that for sure, because everyone was all wearing the same color.
But like, we streamed one of the Sunday services,
Mm-hmm.
and I've watched videos which give off a really strong culty vibe.
Really?
Of like gatherings of people singing. But then this one just wasn't that.
No, it's just a happy kind of
a
gospel.
Coldplay concert's more culty than a Sunday service.
Really?
Like,
why? Because everyone has those wristbands?
Like, kind of, and they all like know when to like come in for the ad-libs, and it's always, I don't know.
Okay.
That's just it's a bad example.
No,
but
I don't think
like,
there's anything culty about it. I think the main thing with cults is that they are usually centered around a cult figure. Yeah. And if that's Kanye, I don't see it being Kanye, because I really do think he's embraced a more humble role. Yeah,
it's usually just on like an electric organ in the corner, and like
the
people there, you can tell from their energy, it's not
really about him.
No.
So that's what, for me, separates it from a cult.
Yeah.
I see why people think that, though, because of the previous talks about his ego and his, like you said, his kind of sporadic behavior sometimes. But I genuinely don't think that, but I recognize that it's difficult to discern. Mm-hmm. And then on Christmas Day, they released Jesus is Lord, which wasn't actually a Kanye West album. It was a Sunday service album.
Yes.
But there were some of his songs on there, I think, and I actually preferred that one to Jesus is King.
I didn't listen to it.
It was just the gospel choir. Yeah. So for me, it was
incredibly talented.
Yeah, for me, it was a purer, you know, kind of execution of the concept.
Yeah.
And I think there's more Christian music to come.
I think.
Do you think this is the final form of Kanye? He makes gospel music.
I think so.
You think?
I think it could be maybe, well...
He named his kids, you know, biblical things.
Yeah, saint, right?
Yeah, Psalm, maybe?
I don't know. I think it might not stay explicitly Christian.
I think it might not be always so dedicated to Christianity. He might make music covering other topics.
Yeah, I think so. Even if it's like a family album, like more like only one.
Yeah,
but exactly. I don't think it'll ever go back to anything
too kind of worldly and sinful.
Yes.
This is kind of one thing I find impressive about it. He mentioned it himself. Is that he said that he thinks it was God showing off. Kanye's kind of conversion was God showing off. It was God saying, "I can take the biggest sinner and the most kind of famous and the most lover of fame person, and can convert him into the most humble follower." Yeah. So that is, when you think about it, those are biblical extremes.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of a story from the Old Testament, which is, what would you say?
I think it kind of legitimizes him in a way.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of too. It can't be fake, kind of, or like.
No, I don't think it's fake at all.
No, like I think it's genuine,
that.
and I don't think he'll go back.
Okay, so that about wraps up Kanye West up to now.
Yes.
I'm sure there will be more controversies to come, more music
West
to come.
Part 2 someday, maybe.
More fashion to come. Yeah, shall we say any kind of final conclusions or predictions or final thoughts? Favorite song?
What, Lost in the Woods, or
Lost in the World.
Lost in the World, yeah. Sorry.
Favorite song? Lost in the Woods, something like that.
Lost in the World, I like that. I also like Ultralight Beam.
Right.
But, yeah. What's your favorite song?
Oh, don't ask me that.
Okay.
Too many. You saw when I was trying to make you that playlist yesterday. Too many.
Yeah. I'm going to say, I think we said it in the intro, like his impact on society is indisputable.
Right.
And I look forward to seeing how his fashion changes with his newfound Christian aesthetic that he is using, because I think it's interesting as a Christian, Hillsongs has been like the only band for a really long time.
Okay.
And they have
big band.
Only big band, yeah. And they have a few different like sub-genres under them. They have like Hillsongs United and so on. So I'm kind of interested to see if he could be as big, because there's no like
if he could one day be as big as Hillsong, is that what you're asking?
Or as like if his music could make it into church.
Oh, okay, be as big in the Christian world.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious.
For sure. That's a good
even
point.
Like the youth groups of the world.
Possible collab with Hillsong incoming?
Yeah, I don't know.
I could see it coming.
I could see it, because they like, but I don't know, Justin Bieber's been a part of Hillsongs LA for a really long time, but his life isn't, he doesn't act in line with his beliefs.
Who? Justin Bieber?
Yeah.
Well, neither did Kanye until recently.
That's the thing. So I feel like we'll see how it goes.
So that was this episode, our biographical series called Kanye West.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you enjoyed it. New episode next week on the cottagecore aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
A very random choice. Look into that if you want to do some research before the episode, but I'm sure we're going to blow your minds with our discussion.
I think so.
You can follow us on Instagram at @the_environmental, where we post cool behind the scenes footage and some scientific discussion and a lot of graphic design and art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed this episode and have a great
day.